Hello to everybody out in Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District. It's your Congressman Jamie Raskin coming in on Friday, August 26th for my favorite time of the week, Local Hero, when we get to salute and celebrate the people that make life here so sensational in Maryland's 8th District. And do I have a local hero for you this week? The great Whitney Ellenby. Whitney is of Montgomery County, and she is a lawyer. She was at the Department of Justice as a civil rights and disabilities attorney, but we are recognizing her for her work in the field of advocacy and service to people with autism. And she founded a group called Autism Ambassadors that gathers hundreds of families in our area together to do special events. I've been out to some dances and to some swim parties, and it's where the families with kids with autism and kids with young people with autism can participate in life with everybody else and not feel encumbered and embarrassed to be in places where otherwise it can be sometimes difficult. And speaking of that, I wanted to recognize Whitney because of something she did recently at the Kennedy Center with a series of performances by the so-called Blue Man Group. And Whitney had a wonderful brainstorm idea, as she often does, and she created a whole day at the Kennedy Center just for the families of people with autism and young people with autism to come and celebrate a sensory-friendly performance. So anyway, that's all I'm going to tell you. I'm going to turn it over to Whitney Ellenby. I'm going to congratulate her and then ask her to tell the whole story of what happened with the Blue Man performance. Please welcome Whitney Ellenby.
Hi, thank you so much, Congressman. How are you?
Good, and thank you for being our local hero.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So tell us what exactly, explain to everybody what happened. You're hearing about the Blue Man coming, and then, you know, the way that you look at things from the standpoint of the people with autism.
Sure. So initially, I would say about 15 years ago, I was looking at the ADA. I was looking at my son who has profound autism, and I was looking at the community, and I was thinking there are all sorts of accommodations for people with disabilities. There's closed captioning, there's wheelchair ramps. And it dawned on me that the accommodation we needed for families who had children with autism was exclusivity. We needed sensory-friendly set-asides. And so I've been running events for about 15 years, and due to COVID, I wasn't able to run any for about 2.5 years. And I was hunting around to come back big. And all of a sudden, I saw that Kennedy Center was hosting Blue Man Group for about 16 performances. And for those who don't know, Blue Man Group is this visually spectacular performance artist group that doesn't have a lot of language. So I knew this was going to be a wonderful mix for children with autism. So I reached out to the Kennedy Center back in September of 2021, and I said, I have a great idea. How about we designate one of these 16 performances as sensory friendly? I will buy a certain number of tickets, about 500 it turned out. You can designate the entire show as sensory friendly, and I promise you it will sell out, which indeed it did. So I stayed in negotiations with them and then with the Blue Men, which was pretty exciting. I didn't ask for any modifications to the show itself. The actual accommodation was simply give us the theater to ourselves so our kids can jump and flap and bounce and do all the delightful things they do without worrying about being disruptive to the general public.
So now, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, your son, and other young people with autism can sometimes react in, you know, an unstable way to loud noises.
That's right.
And so you arranged for the Blue Man Group to basically conduct a completely silent visual performance. Is that right?
That is not right, actually. It was one of the loudest performances I've ever been in. I was a little startled but I figured our kids could handle it. What the Kennedy Center did, which was great, is they supplied headphones for those kids who have the auditory issues, but a great number of kids don't. But when you think of autism, the phobias are as large as the spectrum itself. So for some kids, it was entering the building. For others, it was getting them off the escalator, which they loved, getting them into the performance. And then for many, many of the kids, it's can they simply remain in their seats? And a few of them didn't. They roamed around the theater, they jumped, they bounced, they did everything that they would not ordinarily be able to do if this was a regular general public performance. But it was loud and it was exciting. And one thing that really impressed me, which I was explaining to the Kennedy Center and the parents, is that when you raise the bar, you'd be shocked to see how much our children are actually capable of enjoying and withstanding. And that proved it. If you were to look out at the audience during the performance, which I did many times, you wouldn't necessarily know that this was a special autism showing. Almost entirely, the kids were completely engaged, glued to their seats, riveted and transfixed by the performance.
Wow, what a beautiful thing. And the Washington Post did a remarkable story on the whole event, covering the whole thing. And some of the kids had some beautiful things to say about you too, Whitney. So just tell us in closing how this special Blue Man episode that you put together for young people in our area and their families, that's reflective generally of autism ambassadors and your approach to trying to create autism spectrum family friendly events. Like to tell people generally about what you're doing.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't understand that's unique to autism is how frequently we end up retreating from a venue. So you might go into anywhere from a CVS to a restaurant to a movie theater. Your child may suddenly engage in loud vocalizations. They may gallop. They may do any number of unconventional things. And very often you're either getting glares from the general public, which is fair. They paid good money to not have a disruptive behavior. But then what happens is you end up paying money and having to retreat, having to go home, which is very agonizing for the parents. It can be for the child. It can be for their neurotypical siblings. So when I run the events, I always explain, as I did to the Kennedy Center in the Post, that when we're talking about the most vulnerable people, it isn't just our children with autism. It's also the parents. It's also the siblings who get traumatized when they are routinely asked to leave a venue because they are engaging in these sorts of behaviors. So what the Kennedy Center understood, and they have run sensory-friendly performances before, so I knew they were going to be collaborative in this, is that if we open it up and we designate it for families with autism, everybody gets the right, as the general public does, not only to access the show, but the ability to sort of pay and stay, which is my motto, that you go there and no matter what your child does, if they scream, if they have a meltdown, if they roam the theater, you are not going to be asked to leave. This performance is for you.
Well, Whitney Ellenby, the founder of Autism Ambassadors and the genius inspiration behind the Blue Man performance for so many kids who otherwise would not have been able to enjoy it. We salute you as our local hero, and we commend you for always helping us plan for success for everybody and not plan for failure. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.